Acts chapter 24. Paul before Felix at Caesarea. And after 5 days the high priest Ananias came down with some elders and a spokesman, one Tertullus. They laid before the governor their case against Paul, and when he had been summoned, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying, Since through you we have so much peace, and since by your foresight, most excellent Felix, reforms are being made for this nation, in every way and everywhere we accept this with all gratitude. But to detain you no further, I beg you in your kindness to hear us briefly. For we have found this man a plague, one who stirs up riots among all the Jews throughout the world, and is a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. He even tried to profane the temple, but we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to find out from him about everything of which we accuse him. The Jews also joined in the charge, affirming that all these things were so. And when the governor had nodded to him to speak, Paul replied, Knowing that for many years you have been a judge over this nation, I cheerfully make my defense. You can verify that it is not more than 12 days since I went up to worship in Jerusalem. And they did not find me disputing with anyone or stirring up a crowd, either in the temple or in the synagogues or in the city. Neither can they prove to you that what they now bring up against me. But this I confess to you, that according to the way which they have called a sect, I worship the God of our fathers, believing everything laid down by the law and written in the prophets, having a hope in God, which these men themselves accept, that there will be a resurrection of both the just and the unjust. So I will always take pains to have a clear conscience towards both God and man. Now after several years I came to bring alms to my nation and to present offerings. While I was doing this, they found me purified in the temple without any crowd or tumult. But some Jews from Asia, they ought to be here before you to make an accusation, should they have anything against me. Or else let these men themselves say what wrongdoing they found when I stood before the council. Other than this one thing, that I cried out while standing among them, It is with respect to the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you this day. So, Paul before Felix at Caesarea. The high priest elders and their spokesman came before Felix. The spokesman thanks Felix for the peace given to the people, then tells Felix that Paul is a Christian and stirs riots and profanes the temple. Paul defends himself, saying that he did not stir anything in Jerusalem, and there is no evidence of him doing anything that they have accused him of. And Paul explains that he shares their beliefs, and that the only accusation against him is what he said in verse 21. It is with respect to the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you this day. When he shares his belief, he says that I believe in God of our fathers, and believing that everything laid down by the law and written in the prophets. It's just the only difference is that he believed in the resurrection, and not all of the Jews believed that, only the Pharisees. Paul kept in custody, but Felix, having a rather accurate knowledge of the way, put them off, saying, With Lysias, the tribune comes down. I will decide your case. Then he gave orders to Centurion that he should be kept in custody, but have some liberty, and that none of his friends should be prevented from attending his needs. After some days, Felix came with his wife Drusilla, who was a Jewish, and he sent for Paul and heard him speaking about the faith in Christ Jesus. And as he reasoned about righteousness and self-control and the coming judgment, Felix was alarmed and said, Go away from the present. When I get the opportunity, I will summon you. At the same time, he hoped that money would be given to him by Paul. So he sent for him often and conversed with him. When 2 years had elapsed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus, and the desire to do the Jews for the favor, Felix left Paul in prison. So, Felix knew of the way, which is what Christians believed at the time, and decided to wait until the tribune comes to judge. And then he ordered Paul to be kept in custody, but allowed Paul's friends to tend to Paul's needs. And Felix sent for Paul to listen to him about the faith in Jesus, and he did this listening with his wife. And Paul reasoned about righteousness and self-control and the future judgment. And Felix talked with Paul for ended up 2 years, and then Felix was succeeded by Festus, and Felix left Paul in prison. And this is something I noticed in verse 26. Felix hopes that Paul would give him money. Felix wanted Paul to give him sort of a payment in order to cure his release. Felix ended up rooting for Paul, which was nice. Now that is the end of Acts chapter 24. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe, and goodbye.